Well, good afternoon, everyone. Afternoon. So good to see all of you here on a Sunday afternoon. We realize there are a lot of different things you can be involved in and doing, but certainly we appreciate your opportunity to give us some of your time. We would work together to help our community. I'm Douglas Bonner, and I serve as the state chair for Omega Psi Phi for voter registration, education, and mobilization. And also serve as the program director for the Alabama Democracy Center. I also have with me some of our brothers in Omega that are with us in the room. First, I'll start with my illustrious co-chair, Brother E.C. Rentz, who just stepped out of the room. We're, as his wife told me the other day, two peas in a pod, because he's my co-chair for our hearing committee for Omega Psi Phi for the state, as well as he serves as the director of our Huntsville Democracy Center. And so I'll talk a little bit more about our democracy centers. The democracy centers are something that came about as a result of a nonprofit and nonpartisan group called Center for Common Ground. And they're headquartered out of Rutherford Glen, Virginia, led so ably by founding board member, Miss Andrea Miller. We had the opportunity to work with Miss Miller several election cycles ago, as we were trying to motivate and educate, enlighten, and mobilize voters in the state. And so we, on Juneteenth of 2021, signed a strategic partner agreement with Center for Common Ground to establish democracy centers here in Alabama. And so you'll see there on the map, we have three. We have Huntsville, Selma, and Mobile. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about those before we get to our main event for today. Let's go to the next one. But while we're here, I won't dwell on this, but maybe perhaps not after yesterday, Alabama is no longer the number one college football team in the nation. But when you look at all those other categories, which are real life support categories in the state of Alabama, we have work to do. We have lives to impact. And so this is what Center for Common Ground, our democracy centers, and Omega Psi Phi fraternity are all about. We've got some categories that, for instance, you look there and you talk about the economy, you talk about healthcare. Those things are all very important. So it's very important that we educate and enlighten everyone like you are in order to be able to make a difference. Let's go to the next one. Typically, we focused because we are a fraternity of educated, predominantly Black men, educated mostly in our historically Black colleges and universities. We focus on community services, voter education, registration, and education and mobilization is one of the things we focus on. And so certainly we're not saying we're just concerned about one segment of the race. Yeah, we tell ourselves that 324,000 African Americans that were registered didn't vote in 2020. They were registered and just didn't go vote. And I can expand that, but we can go to the next slide. I can expand that really to say, if you look at that bottom line there where the circle is, all the way over to the left, 1 million people in the state of Alabama did not vote. And these were registered people that did not vote in the state of Alabama. I know we in Omega and all of the other sororities and fraternities inside of what we so passionately call the Divine Nine, we focus on trying to uplift our communities because that's where we came from and so forth. Not trying to be exclusive of others, but look at 1 million. And we're just, we tend to focus on the 324,000. And then we circled down there at the bottom of the slide in trying to look at the BIPOC, community and stuff. But 1 million Alabamians who are registered are not voting. And that means we all have work to do. Let's go to the next one. This is just us saying we're going to do something about it. That's the bottom line. And I won't dwell on that one. Let's go to the next one. This is how we are organized with our democracy centers. I talked about our democracy centers earlier, Huntsville, Selma, and Mobile. Well, the state of Alabama has 7 U.S. House congressional districts. So we, working with Center for Common Ground, in establishing our democracy centers, we established those democracy centers in those 3 locations, but it's not just about Huntsville, Selma, and Mobile. Those democracy centers have regional responsibilities. That is, you take the top 1/3 of the state. The Huntsville Democracy Center focuses on the 4th and the 5th congressional districts. You take the middle portion of the state, the Selma Democracy Center focuses on the 7th, the 6th, and the 3rd congressional districts. Then you take the lower third of the state. The Mobile Democracy Center focuses on the 1st and the 2nd congressional districts. And then we've got a brother, and these are the guys who make up our voter registration, education, and mobilization committee here in the state of Alabama. And it is not, as I always say, an Omega ball game. It's an all of us ball game. This is a we ball game. This is a team sport. And so what these brothers do is not about Omega Psi Phi. It's about all particular groups, whether it's NAACP, whether it's whatever group, church group, your local group that's interested in improving your communities. We work with each and every one. Then, of course, like I said earlier, I'm the program director for the Alabama Democracy Centers, those 3 centers. Those are the names of the brothers who run those democracy centers. And those democracy centers have regional responsibilities to reach out and build coalitions with others. Let's go to the next one real quick. In working with others, these are some of the organizations, the majority of the organizations that we have reached out to across this state. And so we're tied in together. We can no longer work in silos. We've got to all work together to bring about change. I'm not going to stand here, we are not going to stand here and tell you who to vote for. You are all intelligent people. God bless you with intellect just like he gave it to each and every one of us. But we do feel a responsibility to be able to work all of these groups together and work to the common cause that all lives are improved and impacted in a positive way. And so those are the coalitions that we are a part of to make work and bring about change. Next slide. These are some tools that we're using. 21st century technology, text banking, phone banking, postcards. Those are the 3 means we use. Now, text banking, everybody has a cell phone. I guarantee you, everybody sitting out there has a cell phone. So that is definitely the tool that we use with text banking. Text banking is the most efficient and the cheapest. When I get into phone banking, you know, you get calls that you don't answer at home because you can usually call ID screen and stuff. But yeah, we're able to do that for people that generally say, well, I'm not into texting or anything like that. And then the old-fashioned way, which worked, was to send postcards. Some people don't want to get into phone banking, some people don't want to do text banking. So we are able to do postcard. Center for Common Ground provides the basic resources. There are some things that our coalitions have to contribute to that, such as the postage for sending the postcard. And that is the most expensive method to send postcards because we've sent out thousands upon thousands of postcards across the state. We're doing so, and we're continuing to do so right up until about a week before the general election. Next one. We're just about the issues, folks. We don't tell you, like I said earlier, who to vote for. We're about issues and making sure people are informed. And so that QR code allows you to take a picture of that and get tied into an app called Outreach Circle. Outreach Circle allows us to have a network here in Alabama of interested parties and people who want to volunteer and bring about change. And that is the fact of whether or not you want a text bank or whether or not you want a phone bank or whatever you want to do. We're going to be doing text banking between now and the election. And so we would just invite you to join it. We have about 740 users that are part of our network here in Alabama. And I would love to get it up to 1,000. I would like to get at least half of us texting because we get a database of registered voters here in the state, and we want to be able to reach out to each and every one of them. Next slide. Desired outcomes for Alabama. Hey, y'all can probably talk about this to me, but we all agree we want positive change. That's the bottom line of that. Next one. These are the candidates that are, running in the districts. Certainly, we had on Tuesday night in Huntsville, we had a similar forum like we're conducting here today in Huntsville for the District 5 candidates. Our Selma Democracy Center is working to do one over for the 7th Congressional District. And today we are here to do the 2nd Congressional District. And these are the candidates that have been invited, and they will soon be introduced to you, but I'll take this moment to certainly let them stand up and at least wave tribute. They're going to be speaking to you in a minute. We have Ms. Phyllis Harvey Hall. We have Mr. Jonathan Reels. And we did invite current Congressman Barry Moore, but he's not confirmed that he will be here, but we're prepared in case he does. And those are the House candidates. Let's go to the next one. Governor, we know the candidates who are running for governor. I'll let that speak to itself. Then we have U.S. Senate, and only because we visited here in Dothan yesterday, I'll mention that Brother Reverend Dr. Will Boyd was with us yesterday in our state meeting in Omega Psi Phi because he is a member of Omega Psi Phi. But and I'm not endorsing him. I'm just passing the information on to you. But he was with us yesterday in our state meeting and so forth. And then I think that covers what we want to highlight. And Just like in our meetings this past weekend, we've been talking about what we're here to do today. So now I want to take the opportunity to introduce our moderator. Ms. Sharon Blanton Kelly is our moderator for today. She's a native of Dothan. She attended the public schools of Dothan, graduating in, and boy, you know, she must have finished when she was just like 4 or 5 years old. She graduated from Tuskegee University, you know, 1976. She must have only been maybe about 9 or 10 when she was doing that. And then, of course, you know, she got a master's degree in elementary education guidance and counseling and supervision from Troy State University. And she's retired after 36 years as a teacher, administrator, and school principal. Civically, she's currently a member of First Missionary Baptist Church here in Dothan, where brother, when I say brother, you know, that means he's a member of a big South. Brother Reverend Brandon K. Marshall is the pastor. She's associated with the Order of Eastern Star, Miss Grand Chapter State Secretary, and Chi Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Had to make sure I put that emphasis on there, like the AKA normally does. And Lex Vince LaAunt Socialite Club Incorporated, which is a professional women's organization. Dothan, Houston County Retired Educators Association, president of Spectra Care Mental Health Board, member of Dothan Houston County Library Board, president of the Community Advancement Foundation, married to Dr. James Kelly, junior for 46 years, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and loves. I got to coin them because I have a daughter in love now. 4 grandchildren. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ms. Sharon Kelly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bonner. I am very pleased to be here. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And welcome to the 2022 Candidates Forum for the Alabama U.S. House Congressional District 2. Again, my name is Sharon Kelly, and I'm pleased to be your moderator for this afternoon's forum. This forum, as you've heard, is being hosted by the Alabama Democracy Centers and Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Alabama delegation. Furthermore, the host partners are nonpartisan political organizations that serve to encourage informed and active participation in government and public policy, and they do that through education and advocacy. To remain nonpartisan, there is neither support nor opposition of political candidates for the parties. But before we begin, I think if you may have already been asked to silence all of your electronic equipment, and if you will do that quickly, I took the time to do mine before I came up here because it will inevitably go off. Please note that we are also streaming this event from the Hilton Garden Inn in Dothan on the YouTube channel Omega Network for Action. The 2nd Congressional District includes portions of Montgomery County and the entirety of Autauga, Barba, Bullock, Butler, Coffee, Conecuh, Covington, Crenshaw, Dale, Elmore, Geneva, Henry, Houston, and Pike counties, and the other cities in the district include Andalusia, Dothan, Greenville, and Troy. Today is going to be your opportunity to listen to our candidates. They are on the ballot to hear, we're going to hear their views on very specific issues. And it's critical that our candidates are aware of the needs of our state and to focus on building strong and equitable opportunities for everyone. Please be aware that this is a forum and not a debate. The spirit of this event is to be a peaceful medium where ideas are viewed and views are shared, and therefore we will treat each other with respect. The audience will be given the opportunity to submit questions on note cards, and if you will, please raise your hands if you have one. I have one distributed already. Okay, they will be distributed if you need one. And they will be vetted for similarity or likeness so that we won't have to duplicate any of the questions or hear the answers twice. And we will hear those questions prior to the candidates' closing statements. Now to the forum. The format for this afternoon's forum will proceed as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. We will then ask each candidate as many questions as time permits, at 1 minute each. Questions have been reviewed by the host organizations and will be addressed to all candidates. Each candidate will then have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Questions will be directed in rotation to give everyone a chance to respond first. And the timekeeper for today's event, do I see him in place? Okay, the timekeeper for today's event is seated on the front row, and he will hold up a card for the candidate to see. I think in increments of 15 seconds, I know 2 minutes, 15 seconds, and 1 minute. Okay, all right. So I hope they can see that. This afternoon's forum participants are listed alphabetically and include Ms. Phyllis Harvey Hall and Mr. Jonathan Fields. Are we ready for them to come? You may come on up to the podium and take your seats. Thank you all for coming. This afternoon's forum, we will, at this time, we'll move to the opening statement and questions. I want to remind you, I'll wait for them to get us mics in place. I think they're working. Okay. As we move to the opening statements and questions, I want to remind you, please watch for the timekeeper's signal at the 15-second mark and at the end when your time is up. I think that will say stop on that.
Right.
Okay. 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 Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. We will begin with our opening statements from our first candidate, Candidate Phyllis Harvey Hall, for 1 minute.
Good afternoon. I am Phyllis Harvey Hall. I am the Democratic nominee for the 2nd Congressional District here in Alabama. I am an educator. I am a community advocate. I am also a neighborhood president who works closely with communities and building them up, making sure they're safe. I have worked with numerous candidates before, and I want you to know that I'm running to be a voice for the people of Alabama. I'm also going to make certain that I am bringing integrity and unity, and someone who will make sure that what I do is transparent in serving this district. And I would love to see small businesses continue to strive, families. I support unions because unions make America strong. And I want to work with our educational system because that truly is the game changer for what we need in this great state of Alabama. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Now we'll hear from candidate Jonathan Fields for 1 minute.
Hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm running for Congress in the 2nd District. I'd like to thank everybody for being here and thank you for inviting me. I'd also like to thank Barry Moore for really illustrating exactly what he thinks about his constituents. We have, for far too long, had people who treat us like subjects. They want to pretend that they're rulers and not representatives. And today he has shown that he does not care about the people of Alabama's 2nd Congressional District because he did not show up. We're right here in his backyard. Maybe he's too busy being a garbage man, but today he showed that he's a trash representative. We have a lot of problems in this state. Right now, there is a major issue with the prisons, and it is a human rights crisis, and something needs to be done. Maybe Bear is trying to fix that, but I don't think so.
Thank you, Mr. Reels. Now we'll move on to question 1. You will have 1 minute each to answer the questions. Alabama ranks 45th in the nation for overall health care and ranks as the 3rd highest state for maternal mortality. What are your views on where Alabama and District 2 are regarding maternal mortality? What initiatives do you plan to implement within this federal and state healthcare system to significantly improve quality of health for existing Alabamians in District 2? Ms. Hall.
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Kelly. As an educator, I've worked with children and families for my entire life. And when we saw the statistics about where we stand with healthcare and infant mortality, that spoke volumes to all of us. So I would say we have now, thanks to what we have had from other administrations in the federal government, we have Medicaid expansion, which I strongly support and which is here. All we need is a governor who will sign the actual paperwork, sign the document, say, let's expand Medicaid. It would bring hundreds of thousands of people who are underinsured into having actually affordable health care. So we know we need it, and we know that it's here, so we must fund it. And I would work with the Alabama delegation to make certain that we put the public pressure that the governor of Alabama sign this document for us, for our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Reels.
You know what? I don't think I need this. I'm very loud.
So what I think the largest problem that we face nationwide with healthcare is the pharmaceutical drug companies. These ridiculous prices that sometimes are so exorbitant that just one pill, for instance, can cost for certain treatments thousands of dollars. I know this for a fact because I watched my father die of leukemia because he needed a medicine that was $4,000 a day. These types of protections and monopolies that have been created by the federal government we've got this system built on suffering, and we have to remove these protections that these pharmaceutical companies have and get these monopolies out of the way. That is the first step before we're going to see any type of substantive change in anywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Reels. Now for question 2. The Alabama Literacy Act was recently passed in July of 2022, impacting the 2022-23 school year. To implement this act, many teachers will have to take on increased responsibilities with little or no pay increases. This has already caused major teacher shortages across the state, and this will have a significant negative impact on already underfunded school districts, which are majority Black school districts. Do you support the current Alabama Literacy Act, and what are your plans with ensuring that the act is executed fairly and impartially across Alabama school districts? Mr. Reels.
So Alabama law doesn't, it's not enforced by the federal government, but from the federal level, I would say that we need to do things to remove these administrative barriers that are costing the schools money, to where the money could be spent on the actual student, making sure that the child receives the proper education that it deserves. I'm the father of a special needs child, but everybody is the father or mother of a special needs child because every child has special needs. And right now, the current system does not take that into account. And standardization is one of the biggest issues, I think, that schools face. And the underfunding because we're spending all the money on administrative costs rather than the children.
Thank you, Mr. Reels.
The Alabama Literacy Act was passed. You can read what I had to say in some of the newspapers that published that because I was firm against it. When it was passed, we were having a pandemic. Alabama, we saw, is number 50 already in education. And no matter how much we want to say we pass these acts and make more demands upon the teachers, that will not change anything if our legislators are not paying teachers a salary that's going to benefit them to be in that job when you have teachers working 2 jobs. So it came at a time that it was not conducive to put in place. And also, we learned from the No Child Left Behind Act through the federal legislature, just because you make a law doesn't mean it's going to be passed. We need to put in, Alabama is 50th because we underfund our education here in this state. Most of our money and a lot of the economic surplus we have is coming from the federal government. We need our state to step up and do better rather than make mandates. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Question 3. Alabama is reportedly the second worst state in 2021, according to the U.S. News and World Reports. But when talking about college football, as we said before, we're number 1. Healthcare is at 45%. Education, 50th, we're 50. Economy, 45. The infrastructure, 38. Opportunity, 45. Crime and corrections, 45. College educated, 34. The median income in Alabama is $26,498, and it's a difference of $4,635 of the national average. Alabama's overall ranking is number 46 and number 50 in 2018, number 49 out of 50 in 2021. What will you do to change this great disparity for Alabama and District 2? Ms. Hall.
Those are a lot of negative statistics, and even though I am an Alabama fan, we have to know that if we ever start really focusing on quality of life issues in this state, just to a degree that we focus on football, we'll see the changes. But as a federal candidate, one of my proposals would be that as someone who can put forth initiatives, I would love to see an initiative that I call Excel. And that means when I take the initiative, actually make sure we have funds appropriated to go into our schools, where we can lower the class sizes, where we can have professional development training for educators that will be timely and that will work where we can have them where they are focused on student learning, teaching the whole child, and making certain that we have the infrastructure, the buildings that are up to par for 21st century schools. And that's what I would like to focus on as a congressional candidate for district, representative for District 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Reels?
I agree with a lot of what you said right there. In the schools, one of the things that I would love to see, especially in high school, I would love to work with our next Lieutenant Governor, Ruth Page Nelson. She has a plan to push solar and green energy vocational skills in our state. There's a lot of money that can be made for people that have those skills and do that work, putting up solar panels, doing those types of jobs that we do not currently have the infrastructure for here in the state. And I want to see that started at a very early age. You can learn those skills in high school, and when you come out of high school, you may not need to go to college. Maybe you're ready straight out the gate to go make good money, get a good job, and be an active member of your community.
Thank you, Mr. Reels. Question 4. In light of the Supreme Court of the United States overturning of Roe versus Wade and the recent Dobbs decision, What is your position on women's reproduction rights and why?
So, being a libertarian, I like to point this out all the time. The biggest thing that we believe in as a party is the self-ownership, your body autonomy, and women's rights are their body autonomy rights, their human rights. But that also expands to other things. That expands to what you put in your body. Your medical choices should be your choices between you and your doctor. And sometimes those can be recreational choices. Sometimes that can be, maybe you want to have fun on the weekend and smoke a little cannabis. Those are things that you should be able to make the choice to do without the government threatening you with the barrel of a gun to throw you in a cage. And that expands to all things, and that includes women's rights, self-ownership.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
In that statement, I agree with a woman's bodily autonomy being something that we should consider. It is a human right. It is the freedom that we've had as women only for about the last 50 years. It was decided by a majority court over 50 years ago that it was a woman's right to privacy, and that should have remained as what should have been said by our court. I agree that we need to make certain that women have control of their own bodies, their own health care, because at the end of this, you're talking about a woman's life, her right to own her own body and make those decisions, any decision with her family, not the government being in control of our bodies, but us as grown women being able to make the decisions with our family. We should never have government interfere with the freedom of a family to make decisions that best suit them. And we all understand freedom in this country.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. We're now moving to question 5. Currently, cannabis is legal in 19 states, and medical use of cannabis is legal in 39 states, including Alabama. Do you think that cannabis should be decriminalized or legalized?
I think that cannabis should be decriminalized. We cannot have this type of disparity that we see in this country where you have some states where it is legal, and if you're crossing lines in other states, you're saying it's illegal for recreational use. We need to actually look at this the way we did alcohol, when we dealt with prohibition. You must do what we know we need to do. You take this, which is just another herb, and you regulate it, and you make it legal. And then we need to deal with what we have done with locking so many people of color up for possession of this. We are thankful for what the Biden administration has done, but there's more that needs to be done for each state, because we have too many people locked up for what now you can cross a state line and get legal. So we need to treat this the way we treated alcohol and decriminalize it, and then look at expunging. And I do support the MORE Act at the federal level.
Thank you, Mr. Rios.
I believe that you should be able to grow cannabis next to the okra in your garden that you water with the rainwater that you collected in your barrels, green energy, next to the moonshine still that's in the backyard. You should have the freedom for all of those things, because that's what this country is about. There should not be any type of regulation when it comes to some sort of a plant. It's a plant. Grow it next to your okra and your tomatoes. That's what we should be dealing with here. I don't want the government involved in it at all. And if that takes decriminalization, that sometimes comes with fines, as you see in Atlanta. I don't want to see a fine. I don't want to see the government in it at all. It's a plant.
Thank you, Mr. Rios. We'll move to question 6. What are your plans and thoughts for gun control in the United States and in Alabama? Ms. Hall. I'm sorry, Mr. Rios. You can take that.
Okay, so when it comes to any law, you have to look at consequences. There are gun control laws that are on the books right now. For instance, the Brady Act, which came after Ronald Reagan's press secretary was shot. That law went on the books, and it seemed like a good idea at the time because it was a problem. But what ended up happening is you had this giant wave of black men that were put into prison because the laws are enforced differently in different communities. They were arresting people for marijuana and then throwing them in prison because they had a weapon. I would not like to see any type of expansion when it comes to mental health requirements. That scares me whenever you put the government involved, because you have far-right extremists in the Republican Party who classify gay and trans people as mentally unstable. They will disarm you and they will take your rights away. I do not want to see that type of system in this country.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
I don't know if we recognize just how many guns we have in America in civilians' hands. And even though I am an illegal gun owner, I think after we all, someone raised in a rural area, I grew up with guns around me, shotguns, rifles all the time. But I do believe at this particular point that the Second Amendment has been put through the courts. It stands. I stand with the Second Amendment. But as we've had before, we've had a ban on certain types of weapons. And when we start looking at Sandy Hook, when we look at Parkland High School there, we all know that when we're looking at children, we don't want to think about this being blown to bits, because America has a fascination with the NRA. We need a ban on particular types of weapons. This country was built with weapons, and maybe that's our fascination. We can have our guns, Second Amendment stand, but let's actually go back to a space where we had less mass killings with assault rifles.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Question 7. Per the 2020 census, the state of Alabama had a 16% poverty rate, up from the previous year by 0.5%. With the growth seen over the last decade, how will you help individuals and families overcome economic and financial hardships of Alabama and the second congressional district? I'm sorry, Ms. Hall.
Thank you. Just in recent reading, you find that Alabama, we receive a lot of federal funding. We decry and we rail against the federal government all the time about what it does. But Alabama is one of the states that receives more money from the federal government than it actually makes on it. It receives more help from the government than many of the blue states that we decry. But when we look at what's here in the state, we need to raise the minimum wage. That would help families to come out from poverty. We haven't had a minimum wage raise since 2009. We need to actually make certain that we're supporting our unions, because unions give people good jobs. And once again, we need to look at what we do in the state on what we're taxing. As a federal candidate, I can't do a lot with taking the grocery tax off, but I would be an advocate in working with legislators to make certain that we take the burden off of working families with tax food, because that's a necessity.
Thank you.
So I would like to go back in time just a little bit and look at some issues of why we have the poverty rate that we have. And it's not just Alabama, it's everywhere. We have policies, from 100 years ago where certain types of people, white males, were given land. They were given opportunities that other people were not given. And that was done by the federal government through the land lotteries. And it has set up a system where certain people have more now 100 years later. The federal government absolutely still has enough land to do another land lottery. And that would be something that that could give a lot of people some opportunities that they do not have right now. Except maybe this time we could try not being racist.
Thank you, Mr. Reels. Question 8, and Ms. Harvey, you will begin with this one. The President's Executive Order 13985, advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities throughout the federal government, cited closing racial gaps in wages, housing credits, lending opportunities, and access to higher education would amount to an additional $5 trillion in gross domestic product and the economy over the next 5 years. What will you do as our voice and representative in the House or Senate to provide the necessary resources to the underserved, the disadvantaged Black communities, to advance the president's policies and programs for uplifting poor Black people?
As someone who understands what poverty is, coming from a background where, if you read my bio, parents that were 8th and 9th grade, coming from domestic abuse, a family where there was incarceration, I understand poverty quite well. And when you have any administration, be it the Biden's administration, be it the Bush administration, if it's going to be fiscal policy that benefit poor people, because we have more poor people in this country than we have anything else. And if the poor people could never stop looking at race and look at policy and look at how the government doesn't serve anyone if you're poor and working class, and we unite and look at these policies and stand together, we will not deal with these inequities. Because right now, be it either party, they serve the rich. The lobbyists have their hands in all sides of our congressional delegation. I will serve you, the people of Alabama. I want transparency, and I will not be owed to the lobbyists. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. There is a big class issue. That is the number one issue that we face in this entire country. We do have more poor people than we have rich people, but the rich people have all the control. One of the things that I would like to see that would advance this equity that we're needing to address right now is the student loan crisis. My solution would be a little bit different than what has been proposed recently. The banks that lent these loans are predatory institutions, and they are all part of the same predatory nationalized banking monopoly that is in Washington. And that institution has its hands all over the place. A federal loan forgiveness program that passes the burden to the taxpayer is not a solution, but there are tons of ways to address these issues without passing the burden on, and it has to be addressed.
And you can hold on to the mic, Mr. Weeks. You're going to be first with the next question. Question 9. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act narrowly passed the U.S. House along party lines and continues to sit without action in the Senate. The incumbent voted no in the House. If you can, as a Democrat and a Libertarian nominee, how will you vote if you are elected and have an opportunity to vote on this bill in the future, and why?
So I would vote for any type of legislation, period, that is securing people's voting rights. I believe in voting rights for felons. I believe in voting rights for anyone who is a citizen of the United States. It doesn't matter if you're incarcerated or not. Voting rights are a human right. It's something that is granted to us from the Constitution. It's absolutely disgusting that people would like to take away somebody's voting rights just because they don't agree with how they're going to vote in the long run. And I would absolutely vote in favor of any legislation that is securing voting rights.
Thank you. Ms. Hall.
And I agree with Ms. Rose here. I would definitely support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I think that we know that voting should be expanded, not restricted, and it is one of the foundational rights. And so many people, be it women, be it Black people, have fought for this right, to have the right to vote. So we now see where we have a party that's willing to take back those rights because they don't agree with how we vote. But this is a right that we should have. And as stated earlier, if you have paid the time for a crime, there's no reason that we as a developed country are not restoring the rights of those who were incarcerated. When you leave that prison or that jail, everything that you left to pay for that crime, when you come out, it should be restored to you with your other property. And voting is a right that we should have. So by all means, I support any expansion of voting rights.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. And you can hold on to the mic to start off. Okay. Question 10. Do you believe that President Biden is the fairly and duly elected president of the United States? And explain your position.
We have had 46 presidential elections. and this time we finally had a president to leave and could not accept the results. Certainly, Joseph Biden is the president of the United States. It has been held up by a Supreme Court that even the previous president stacked the court with 3 people all in a rush, and they voted to say, hey, Joseph Biden is the duly elected president of the United States. Why are we even having this discussion at this point? This was an election. It was a fair election. We have a president. And as we look at what's happening, it is coming. Even the former president has been called saying that he knew he lost. So this is almost to me a what we call a moot conversation. We should accept the results like we've done for every other presidential election. And let's get about the business of building our country after a pandemic. So let's move on. We have a chief and let's work with him.
Thank you.
I don't even know why we're having this conversation. Everybody knows that I am the duly elected president. Thank you.
Question 11. Do you believe that everyone involved in perpetrating the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law? Why or why not? I think this is Ms. Hawes. Ms. Hawes.
Go, I think it's mine.
Okay, go ahead and take it.
It's a difficult one, but I'll take it.
So I think there's different levels to the entire situation. There are absolutely people that, they broke in, they killed people, they harmed people, they did damage to, government property. Those people they're criminals. But at the same time, there are some people that did show up that day to address grievances. And I do not want to see somebody that just showed up outside of the Capitol to address their grievances to their representatives prosecuted for that. Because there's a lot of times that I feel like maybe I want to go outside and march down the street and say, hey, I'm not going to stand for this injustice. Now, I don't agree with why they were there. But if they didn't harm someone or destroy property or kill someone, then I don't see why they would be prosecuted. But there's a lot of people who did it.
Thank you.
And I think that, Ms. Kelly, if I'm correct, you're saying that for the people that we did know, who did break into the building, who did defecate and mess up the walls, we don't want to talk about the vulgarities of what happened in that space, but you had people who were actually wiping fecal waste on our structures there at the Capitol. We had them breaking buildings. We saw them scaling. I was watching as they were scaling the Capitol, breaking in, knocking windows. So those are the people that you're referring to. When we saw them walking through the halls and let's find Nancy, but I don't think they said it that well in such language. Those people need to have the full prosecution that's due. Now, for those who were on the outside and they claimed they were there, I think that they were claiming they were there for peaceful protest, but we now know there were guns stored away. We need to make certain, if we can find the people who were there, that they are prosecuted, because this was not a peaceful protest. A peaceful protest does not end the way we saw that ending. And so I believe that we need to prosecute them.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Question 12. What is your position on term limits for the U.S. representatives and the senators? Do you support term limits or not? And tell us why. If elected or re-elected for the successive terms, what would be a reasonable number of years in your view to serve? And would you commit to a maximum of 2 terms, which is 4 years total for the House and 12 years total for the Senate?
Thank you for asking that, and that's a very complicated question for me in the sense that I've recently come around to where I do believe in term limits, because I've always thought that the term limit rested with us, the voters. We can go to the polls at any point and vote anyone out. So I think that in some way it really speaks to the lack of our engagement in our political process that we do have to come here. But I would like to say this before this time goes, that I do support time limits, but I would like it more equitable between the House and the Senate, because a House of Representatives is 2 years, a Senate is 6 years. So if we are going to say that, let's give it 3 to 4 years for the House and 2 years for the Senate. Because those 4 years for the House is only 8 years, but the Senate is 12. So I would look at it, let's look at reframing it, and what I would love to do in Congress, put forth an amendment to that and see how it's done that way. But I certainly believe in term limits, but I would like to see it changed out from the numbers that they were given.
Thank you.
And I do commit to it.
So on your point of allowing voters to determine term limits, I love that idea, but that really doesn't work in practice with all the gerrymandering that happens in this, especially in this state. It becomes very difficult to vote somebody out whenever they draw the district to make it nearly impossible. But I absolutely do support term limits. I think you would have to be a crazy person to, or incredibly dishonest, to say that I want to be in Washington for 30 years. You have to be crooked to be up there that long. I don't want to be up there more than 4 years. So yeah, 2 terms for me. I'm done. I'm out. Maybe get me a different job.
Thank you. All right, question 13. The Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas went on record stating that rights for same-sex marriage, contraception, Americans' fundamental privacy, due process, equal protection rights, and perhaps even mixed marriages should be revisited by the court. Do you agree or disagree, and explain why?
I think,
We're both probably going to be on the same page on this one.
okay, same time.
So, when it comes to same-sex marriages and parental rights, all same-sex rights are human rights. I don't understand why we're trying to start backtracking. We just got to the point where we have same-sex marriage. We should be moving forward instead of trying to remove people's rights. This is 2022, am I right?
Yes.
Yes, it's 2022. What are we doing? This is not 1940. I'm blown away by the bigotry that is starting to shine its ugly head into the light in this country. We have to stand up against it.
And I would like to begin by saying I seldom agree with anything that Clarence Thomas has to say or much of anything, but with this, and as Jonathan said, this is bigotry. We have the Marriage Equality Act. It's like, let's move forward. We should be over our fears of whatever concept we have of homophobia. This is humans we're talking about. Look around us. We all live and breathe with each other. We have members of our families. So this is about speaking to love as human beings. And we can't tell people who to love. So get beyond the Christian nationalism that we're facing and let's deal with people as another human beings with compassion and love. And this is where we get mixed with, politics and religion. Because when you get through with that, that's coming speaking to a particular group of people and their religious belief. And that is not what we are moving forward with in this day and age in America. And we should let people choose their life partners and let's focus on improving the quality of lives of people.
Thank you both for answering those questions and providing your input and feedback. We do have at this time 2 questions from the audience that I would like to share with you. And we're going to use the same time limits that we did before. Education. What is your position on critical race theory? Ms. Hall, since you have the mic, you can go ahead.
I'm still trying to think what is critical race theory. But in a seriousness, that is just really where I once before said that it's like we can't remove ourselves from this idea of this country's past and reconcile. And there's this group that wants to actually rewrite history. And we need to accept history for what it is and acknowledge what we've done and move past it and build those bridges to unity. Critical race theory is a concept that was taught as a class in higher education, not our K-12 school. And we have certain Republicans who are using it as a platform to do what they've always done, particularly in the South, which is the Southern strategy of conquer through division, divide and conquer. This is a non-issue that has been brought forefront. So I, as an educator, know that it's not taught because I never taught it. Let's just teach history, teach it accurately, and move forward.
So whenever I've been asked this question, I have not been able to find anyone who's asking me the question that can actually define what critical race theory is. They know they're supposed to be scared of it because somebody on TV told them that. But it is a tool of division that right now this panic about it. But when it comes to history, we should be teaching accurate history about what really happened. And sometimes what really happened was ugly, you know, not just with things that happened to African Americans, but things that happened to Native Americans, things that happened to Hispanics, things that happened to every different type of person. There's always ugly there because that's human nature. There's always ugly and there's always beauty. We just need to teach things accurately.
Thank you. This is for both of you. If elected, what kind of accessibility will your constituents have to you?
I promise to be not just someone who comes to a group of people that I think will vote for me and donate to me, but as I am now a candidate of the people, working with the people, out among the people, I promise to be that same person. You can get my cell phone number is out. I tell people, just Google me, you will find me. I won't run away from any of my constituency. Whether you agree with me or disagreed, I will make certain that I'm keeping up through social media, through a newsletter, and I will have the town hall shortly after I am elected to be out there talking to you, the people, because I have groups of you that I will need to hear from you so that I can go in and make that common sense legislation and vote in a way that will benefit people. As I love to say, I'm this common sense girl from Connecticut, and I will be out there with you because I am of the people.
That was quick. So the problem with when you're up in Congress a lot of times is that there are stalemates. There's a lot of times where you're not going to be getting stuff done, and you're going to know that you're better served in your community and getting to know what's going on here in the district. And if there's a situation where I know for a fact that this bill's not going to pass, and it's going to pass with 60% of the vote or something, 70% of the vote, 80% of the vote, I would much rather be here helping out in the district and getting to know everybody here. I plan on spending a lot of time popping around. Catch me on Wednesday afternoon. I'll be at Shoney's. I want to be connected in the community. I want people to be talking to me. I want to hear the concerns, just like you. I have my cell phone number right there on the internet.
Thank you. Thank you both for responding to those questions from the audience. Okay, we got two more. All right, you ready to go? Mrs. Hall, currently, most working Americans are sending more than 30 to 40. Let me get this one. I'm trying to read the handwriting. Okay. Currently, most working Americans are spending more than 30 to 40% of their income on rent. And in 93% of the U.S. counties, they can't afford a modest one-bedroom apartment. In Alabama, rent has risen $1,390. I'm thinking this should be since last year, and 50% of renters are suffering. Do you support a $15 minimum wage?
I support a federal minimum wage increase. I think that we need to look at how that could be done over the next couple of years. You know, we are coming out of a pandemic, and we are thankful for the current administration that, according to the Congressional Budget Office, that we are seeing a decline in the deficit. But I would love to see us raise the minimum wage, but I think we need to look at that more than just a dimension of raising one area. There are a lot of companies that are already expanding the minimum wage. I do say we need to move it immediately up to $10 an hour, and then as gradually as this has been known, I say this, let's move it over the next couple of years as we see our budget increase and we get out from under some of the things that we're facing now with our economy. Let's look at how we can raise it incrementally over the next couple of years to get it to $15 an hour. And there are other things that the government can do, like expand healthcare, and that can equate to an increase in people's bottom line anyway.
These same banks that issued these predatory loans that these children, if we're completely honest, took out while they were still in high school to go to college, are the same people that issued these mortgages that led to the housing crisis that we are still facing from 10 years ago. And it keeps getting worse. A $15 minimum wage, while that would be, it seems on the surface like it will help, and it might help a little bit. But the real issue is we have to address the root of the problem, and that is the crippling inflation and predatory debt that is being pushed on the American public by predatory banking monopolies. We have to address that, and until we do, we can raise the minimum wage all we want, but they are still going to suck all of the wealth out of the working class Americans. We have to address that.
Thank you. Our next question from the audience. It appears that other than areas of Montgomery County and the city of Dothan, much of the Congressional District 2 is not growing economically. If elected, what would you do to bring economic development to the district?
Sure. Like I said before, and I'm happy to see her in the audience, I would love to see a growth in green energy. And that is something that libertarians are definitely pushing for in this state. And whenever Ms. Ruth Page Nelson is elected lieutenant governor in just a few days, that is something that we're going to be pushing everywhere. And that type of development is just the first step. And that can happen anywhere. It can, especially in rural areas where you have giant areas of land where solar panels can become very, very profitable for the people that can actually work on them, construct them, and build that type of infrastructure.
Thank you.
Well, when we look at these rural areas, and one of the things that we must look at is making certain that broadband is there. We have seen a changing economy. Our world has changed since 2020. So make sure that we have broadband in the rural areas. And that has been an area that we know is lacking in these small counties, like when you're going to Bullock County, Conecuh County. So expand broadband. And another thing I would like to look at, there are grants and resources available through the USDA to help offset some of the economic plight of small towns. And we must start looking at working with our government and our economies to make certain that we are looking at what we can do with the land that's available in those areas. And we are going through the USDA to find the grants and initiatives to actually bring businesses. And I would love to see where we're having, I would work with putting accelerators into these small towns so that people can learn how to actually build a craft, build a business, and make it survive. Because we have seen so many of our mills and companies leave and destroy these areas. So we've got to bring 21st century jobs and economies back.
Thank you.
So might I add a few more economic things, and you can add some more economic things too. Okay, there's a lot of things that I think can be accomplished in this district.
We will go with that in 30 seconds.
30 seconds, one more thing that should be focused on in all of these farms, cannabis. cannabis has an incredible profit margin, and if there's so many uses, clothing, medical, cannabis, it'll uplift Alabama.
Ms. Hall, you have the same?
And since Jonathan brought up farming, I'm from a small farming area, we always had gardening. And I think farming, which it brings in so much money in our area, I think that we need to continue to, in our schools, with agriculture, because we are the land, we have here so much sun, we have so much solar, we can do the development, but we've got to make certain in our schools, we're teaching something else, financial literacy, business, a business education, and making certain we're getting and bringing agriculture back. We use the land, we eat from the land keeps us going. Let's use it. And what Alabama has? A lot of land.
Thank you. You can hold on to that. One last question. Do you support a tax increase on billionaires?
Is that even a real question? Listen, even if I were a billionaire, I would support that. You have the guy that owns so much of, not the but the wind, that's a Berkshire guy. I can't think of his name right now, but even he's saying, as a millionaire, multi-billionaire, he said that it's time that we properly tax billionaires, because the tax loopholes, the S corporation, where they flow their money through and they don't pay taxes. Even the former president didn't pay taxes. I paid more taxes as an educator than he paid. But when we leave them out and we put the tax burden on working people like us, we want to find money to fund programs. Let's cut the wealth tax that was passed in the last administration. Let's tax the billionaires at a rate that they weren't taxed in the past, because that's how we can get from a fundless deficit. So trickle-down economics has never worked, and we as working and poor people need to understand that and stand against it. And we know that all economies build from the bottom up.
Thank you.
So the problem that I think we face when it comes to taxation is that a lot of times, people, they like paying their taxes. Some people feel like it's their duty, because they want to be a part of building a better world and a better community. But the problem is that if the government is not doing a good job at actually fulfilling the promise that they've made you as a citizen, and maybe they're wasting their money, bombing brown people overseas, instead of actually building infrastructure and fulfilling the promise that they made to you, I personally believe that people should have the right to withhold their taxes, because I don't really want my money going to murdering people. And that's a lot of times what the US government does with our tax dollars. Now, taxing a billionaire at a higher rate just to kill people overseas is not the solution. So that's a complicated question for me to answer. Until we fix that problem, I don't really want to see the government with much more money.
Thank you. And just in time, we are down to our closing remarks, and I want to give each of you an opportunity to say what you want to say and tell us why you think that you are the better person or that you are the most qualified. And we have 2 minutes. Yes.
As I stated, Phyllis Harvey here, running for U.S. Congress District 2. I want you to consider making me your elected official, because not only do I bring that common sense approach to governance, I will be someone who will make certain that our government is working for you. And as Jonathan said there about taxes, we know that our government is funded through taxes. So that's the way it has worked. So we can't just throw that out and think that government will continue to function. What we need to look at, government is not some entity, it's people. We elect the right people, people who bring integrity, people who will bring real transparency, not talk about it like the current person, Barry Moore, does, just talks about it, but there's not enough transparency. I will make certain that we have the transparency. I will make certain when there's an opportunity to bring funding to this district, like there was, and he neglected to get community projects funded, I will make certain that those projects are funded. When we need schools that can be renovated, when we have children looking for sports complex, when we have sewage lines that are still not functioning, when we even have areas like this that need better infrastructure, and when we need to make certain that we have programs that are benefiting our seniors, I will make certain that those communities, our bridges repaired, I will make certain that's done when there's an opportunity. So I promise to serve you, I promise to be transparent, and I promise that I will be that representative that you're not looking for. You will not just see me at the best dinners. I love to get down and come out and eat fried fish in backyards too. So know that I will be a representative of the people. I understand that we need government that will improve education, number one, in this state. Everything we talked about can be improved if we improve our education. Teach the people, and they will learn and know better, and we can have everything we need moving better, including crime decreasing. So vote Phyllis Harvey Hall on November the 8th for good governance and a bridge builder that you can have to be proud of in District 2.
Thank you.
I think it was pretty clear today that we agree on a lot of things. And I think that's how people are in general. The average Alabamian, it doesn't matter what your background is, you probably agree on most things. You want to see people's rights not violated. Nobody thinks that pollution is a good thing. Nobody thinks that that people should be, locked up when they didn't hurt anyone. Nobody thinks that people's voting rights should be removed for no reason. People generally agree, whether or not they're a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, an Independent. People want to see a better world, but we do not have a government that represents us. We're running to be a representative, and that is our job, and we're supposed to represent the people. But the problem is that most of the people in Washington, D.C. are not elected officials. There are no ways to remove them from their position. There is no accountability. There's no accountability because we have things like qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is a doctrine that was established during the civil rights era to allow people to violate the rights of activists, and it is still on the books to this day. And all of the members of Congress, when George Floyd was murdered, they did nothing but take photos. And the reason why they took photos instead of doing something was because qualified immunity is what allows them to not have consequences when they violate your rights or put people in positions to violate your rights. I want to remove that. That's the number one priority for me. I'm Jonathan Reels. Vote for me November 8th.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming, both of you candidates. So let's give them another. Running for office is not an easy thing. It's not cheap. And you have a lot of people that you have to meet and work with and listen to. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come out and share your views and your thoughts with us. So on behalf of the Alabama Democracy Centers and Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, I want to thank our candidates. Thank you very much for your participation forum and for participating in the democratic process. Running for office and serving as an elected official, it requires dedication and commitment. I want to remind everyone else in the audience, those who are viewing us, about the vote on Tuesday, November the 8th. Please check your local election offices for registration deadlines and absentee ballot deadlines. And I want to give you just a few of those dates if you want to listen. What is the voter registration deadline? In person, by mail, online is October 24th, 2022. If you are mailing in an absentee ballot to request by the deadline, in person, November 3rd, 2022, by mail received by November 1st, 2022. The absentee ballot mail-in return deadline, In person, it's November 7th, 2022, and by mail, received by November 8th, 2022. I know that we're all going to go out and vote. We are a dedicated group in here, and I appreciate all of you, and thank you for taking the time to participate in this forum this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Let's thank our candidates again. And let's really give a thunderous round of applause and thanks to our moderator. And we also want to pause and recognize Ms. Ruth Page Nelson, who's in the room and in the audience with us today. I'm gonna take liberties here. We're nonpartisan, nonprofit, Omega Psi Phi and Alabama Democracy Centers, but I'm gonna give Ms. Page 2 minutes, Brother Walker, to come and say hello and say what it is she would like to say to the group.
As y'all can see, I'm not running this race. This ain't my race. I was tapped on the shoulder by Mr. Reels here. He said that the Republicans had already tweeted that they won. There was no Democratic opponent. Would I like to run? No. I said no. I'm not getting any of that. Finally, one day he called me, he said, Ruth, think about it like this. At least you'll have a voice. I have been praying, asking God to just give me a voice. Y'all know I've been down here fussing about everything. Our boys being locked up, drugs and guns planted. I moved to Dothan on a word from God. Then, when I tried to build a Green Jobs Training Center so that we would be ready for this new renewable energy wave, they burned it down, the Saints Apartments, y'all might remember. So I was willing to catch all the people who were falling through the cracks. I'm a microbiologist and I'm a licensed master electrical contractor in Georgia. I'm a solar trainer through the Department of Energy Solar Instructor Training Network Program. My dream is to make sure that we get trained and we get self-sufficient. Right now I brought these because I believe in sustainability. A lot of you don't know what sustainable living means and local living. Love blueberries, but these are from Peru. When you talk about the cost of goods, inflation, climate change, contaminating the environment, flying things in every day from other countries, we have an issue. I really want to address how to vote for us. We got on the ballot after the primaries. So in order to vote, we're on the ballot. But if you vote straight ticket anything, you'll miss at least 7 state offices around the state and many others around the state. Vote, you can do straight ticket, but you have to bubble in to override. Ruth Page Nelson, Lieutenant Governor, November 8th. I'm a mother, I'm a Black mother. You know me from Guns and Drugs on Black Men here in Dothan, fighting against the establishment. Please remember me. Thank you. Thank you all for listening.
So you heard there from Ms. Ruth Page Nelson. We will say the other candidate for Lieutenant Governor is the incumbent Will Ainsworth, Republican. And so again, thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to be here. I know you're missing some football games or something, whatever it is you do on Sunday afternoon. But certainly we have to be about this democracy that we have so that all of our voices are heard and we get to exercise an important right for which so much was sacrificed by a lot of people all the way back in order that we might have the right to do so.
I want to be asked for, but I want to ask you about one more thing about the statement, will y'all be making a statement regarding, public bill?
The question is, will we be making a statement? Certainly, the Alabama Democracy Centers and the Omega Psi Phi fraternity are nonpartisan and nonprofit organizations. And so, certainly as individual voters and members of particular organizations that might have proper venues for making statements. For instance, in Omega Psi Phi fraternity, there's an element called Omega Network for Action. That's the political action arm of our fraternity. Certainly, there's not one in the Alabama Democracy Centers or Center for Common Ground. But our Omega Network for Action, for instance, Omega Network for Action did go on record. That's the political action arm of the organization, which is a totally independent entity. They're the ones that take those types of positions for organizations. I imagine it's the same way for a lot of other organizations. Also, we would encourage you as Alabama Democracy Centers to make sure you check us out and go on our website. And Brother Rentz has some palm cards with a QR code on it. And you can download our application called Outreach Circle. And on there is linkages to be able to register as long as you can register online as long as you have Alabama's driver's license. If you don't have an Alabama's driver's license, then you're gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way of going to your local registrar and filling out a card and all of that. So make sure you download Outreach Circle. Like I said earlier, we've got about 740 followers on that. Register all of your family members, your friends, everybody. Share that particular app with everybody. It's a free app. Then when you get to the app, you got to type in the code, capital W, capital I, capital O, 363. And that links you to our Alabama network, because there are other folks that are using Outreach Circle across southeastern states that fall under the Center for Common Ground. So I think that answers your question that was just asked there. Also, I want to acknowledge our leaders, first of all, for the Alabama State Organization of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Let me restate that. The Alabama State Organization of the 7th District of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Because, my state representative, Brother Kerry Hill, who's our leader, would have said, you said everything right, except when you forgot the district representative. And so Brother Reginald Harris, our district representative, would have been saying, hey, Brother State, good job, but your guy didn't even call me out as the district representative. And then on behalf of our Grand Basilis, newly elected Grand Basilis, who was here with us yesterday, Brother Ricky Lewis, is our international leader for Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Once again, nonpartisan, nonprofit, and we just simply try to uplift the community, and that's what we do in terms of voter registration, education, and mobilization. So this has been a part of educating and enlightening the citizens in order that we might make intelligent choices. And so, with that, I believe we've covered just about everything. Ms. Kelly, our moderator, covered information that you need to be able to check on as far as registration and all that. And I would invite you to go to the Secretary of State's website. It has all the information that you need on there. Then it will even link you down to your particular local registration office. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for blessing us with your presence. We hope you've been enlightened and enhanced and certainly encouraged to go back to your communities and inform not only your family, your friends, but your communities to make sure you go out and do what you need to do on November 8th to have your voices heard and to exercise your right in order that we keep this precious democracy that we have. Have a good evening.
Good.